Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. Today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the release of Furiosa, the next film in the Mad Max saga, though it's definitely worth arguing whether or not Mad Max Fury Road wasn't really the first film in this Furiosa franchise, might be set in the Mad Max world, but just like that film had very little to do with Mad Max, this has basically nothing to do with Mad Max. So we'll talk about what right now the early tracking is going into the weekend, and also how box office media continues to show their hand in how they try to portray certain films and the headlines that they use. And I talked about this a bit on this past Tuesday's stream. Remember, I do stream on Tuesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you have not been watching those, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and make sure that you have that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel, so you can join us for those discussions, because let's just jump right into it. Ultimately, when we talk about this movie right here, Furiosa, if you look at what Deadline is saying, this is Tony and Nance over on Deadline, they're saying that Furiosa is trucking towards $80 to an $85 million worldwide start. Now, the reason why I'm going to pause there is because notice that they are trying to position this film within the context of its worldwide numbers. Compare that to how they are now going to frame the film, the Garfield movie, where it says this is consuming $30 million United States. So it's only looking at the domestic box office for the Garfield movie and exclusively looking at the worldwide numbers for the Furiosa film. Kind of gives you an idea of why there is such a stark contrast between these two numbers, right? 80 versus 30, that's quite a large number. However, when you actually dive into what the actual domestic like-for-like comparisons are, you start to realize that these films actually are going to be battling it out for that top spot. There's a situation where you could potentially see the Garfield movie, because of it appealing to younger audiences, appealing to those families that can show up especially on Saturdays and Sundays, might actually have a chance of beating out the 3-day, maybe even the 4-day total of Furiosa. Remember that both of these films are going to have a 4-day domestic total because of the fact that it's coming out over Memorial Day weekend, and that is, I think, going to be also an interesting thing to use in comparing this to Mad Max Fury Road, because let's just say anyone trying to argue that this film is going to have a massive opening, so impressive, when you compare it to just the film from 2015, and you realize that that film only had a 3-day opening, where this one has a 4-day opening, oh boy, things start to get a little bit dicey, to say the very least. But of course, Tony and Nance are going to continue to try to justify their numbers here. Again, all the way down, though, at the very bottom of their coverage of the numbers, it says, oh, by the way, that's a $40 million 4-day domestic. So they're projecting $40 million for Furiosa over 4 days. If you think about other films that came out this year alone, right, not to mention of previous years, we all know that there were a lot of films that did a lot better than that over a 3-day weekend. So the fact that this film over 3 days is already tracking to a certain degree, and now over 4 days is only tracking to 40 million, maybe more, that is not looking very good. It's a little bit brighter when you look at the numbers over at Box Office Pro. It's very sad that with Sean Robbins no longer really being affiliated with them, that they are not having the charts like they used to do, which makes me very sad. But he also has kind of fallen behind a bit. He didn't have a box office breakdown from this past weekend, and he didn't have a preview for this weekend either. So I don't know if he's maybe out of town or what the issue might be there. But Box Office Pro does have their projections. So they're thinking that the 3-day opening is going to be a range between $40 and $50 million. So obviously a lot higher than what Deadline saying $40 million plus for the 4-day total. They're saying 40 to 50 million for the 3-day. And then the 4-day total for Box Office Pro, they think 45 to 55 million is probably what it will end up happening. Saying there it'll have 20% of the market share of the films that will actually be out. And this, I think, is also a great way of showing you just how close Furiosa is going to be to the Garfield movie, because that 20% versus the 19% market share is being projected right now by Box Office Pro, where their 3-day total for Garfield movie that they're projecting is 35 to 45 million and a 4-day of 45 to 50. So the high end of Furiosa is a lot higher than the high end of the Garfield movie, but you can see how, because of the range of these numbers, right, depending on how strong do these films hold from Friday to Saturday, what kind of drops do we see there? What kind of audience shows up for Furiosa versus what shows up for the Garfield movie? All of these things could determine and make a difference between a couple $1 million here or there. So it'll be very fascinating to see where these numbers actually end up. The number 3 film, according to their charting, is going to be the film If, or IF. Some people said that's how it's pronounced, IF for Imaginary Friend. Again, I know that's what it stands for, but it just looks like If to me. If you wanted IF, you should have just put I period, F period. But that's, I guess, just me there. And then right now, this film is projected to make $16 to $20 million over the 3-day, $20 to $25 million, and this can be its second weekend of release. And so we are seeing, again, A bit of a drop here, but as it says here, a minimum 50% drop is likely for this movie. So definitely not the strongest of drops. We were hoping, or at least the people associated with this film were hoping probably that the signs last weekend of those strong holds on Saturday would maybe carry over, but the Sunday hold was not nearly as strong. The film came in underneath the projections, actually, even according to last weekend's numbers. And also, they are now projecting the film to have a pretty sizable drop for a film of its caliber. So it's going to be interesting to see where that film ends up. We'll make some projections on whether this film will make money or not. But let's really dive into the Mad Max discussion, because obviously with Furiosa, most people are going to be seeing Furiosa. Of the audience that watches me, probably most will be watching Furiosa, if watching anything. I know most of y'all have kind of checked out of all movies. Some of you might want to go see the Garfield movie just to, give that film more money to try to maybe help it be Furiosa. Again, I know that there's different audience members who have different opinions. I'm going to be seeing Furiosa tonight. I have my ticket to go see this film tonight. Obviously, we're going to be talking about this on Friday Night Tights tomorrow. But one of the most fascinating things about all of this, right, is that 3-day opening. Okay, so keep this in mind that, again, Tony and Nance, they hid the domestic opening for this movie in, again, long way into their actual coverage of it, right? Not from the very beginning. They waited for it to be like, oh yeah, by the way, 45 million abroad. It was the last thing they mentioned as far as the actual numbers are concerned. They went on to also say, well, hey, in comparison to Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, hey, this is actually looking pretty good because it's got a certified fresh rating, which is something that Dial of Destiny could not have. And we all know critic ratings do not mean anything, especially when it comes to box office, and especially more so in today's world. But that $40 million metric is an important one, because if we go back in time to Mad Max Fury Road back in 2015, so almost 10 years ago at this point, that film opened to around $45 million domestic. Now, these are the unadjusted numbers. If you're wondering, why are you using Box Office Mojo? As you all know, I'm not a big fan of their website because sometimes their numbers are not up to date as quickly as the numbers. Sometimes they also make mistakes and it takes them a long time. I still remember there were a lot of times when John Campea used their site as a way of showing, hey, look how amazing this movie you said was going to do bad is doing, because they accidentally put in a wrong, they put an extra zero behind a number and it made it look like it's very successful. Then all of a sudden they changed it and the numbers had it right all along. And again, all these sites will have issues from now and then, but it's also because it's owned by IMDb, and ultimately that means it's owned by Amazon. And so again, it kind of has gone a little bit downhill ever since really they changed the formatting. But anyway, I digress. $45 million though. So you can hardly think, okay, $45 million was what Fury Road made, and this movie's making 40. This movie also opened over a 3-day weekend, whereas the one coming out this weekend's opening up over a 4-day weekend. Oh boy, that doesn't look good. In fact, let's go ahead and show you a direct comparison, and we're going to use some numbers here. We always love doing math here on OMB Reviews, and we love our charts. So as you can see, Mad Max Fury Road, when you adjust for inflation, trigger warning there, $59 million is what the film actually made. If you take the $45 million from that time and equate it to what the value of the dollar is today, it's around $59 million in value. If that's not your cup of tea, well, guess what? The ticket sales show you the same exact story. Roughly, over the 3-day weekend in 2015, Fury Road sold about 5.3 million tickets. And so these are not the biggest numbers in the world, right? Fury Road itself really didn't make that much money, right? $380 million worldwide of a $150 million budget. Again, we've seen better numbers, especially for the budget, and I think ultimately it's just not a franchise that's going to bring in a lot of people that are not either fans of the franchise or intrigued, like that kind of action, or fans of the director. Again, it's a little bit more of a niche audience, and I think the box office numbers kind of showcase that. But still, 5.3 million tickets is still a lot more than what Furiosa in 2024, 9 years later, is expected to make. So taking that $45 million number, so going from Box Office Pro's numbers, their average for what they think the 3-day total will be. So again, 59 million was over 3 days, or 45 you could say was over 3 days. Right now they're saying that the film's going to make between 40 and 50 on the 3-day, and around 50 or 55 on the high end over the 4-day. And if that holds up, that means, let's say 45 million is the actual number after 3 days. Well, guess what? That means it's only sold 3.4 million tickets compared to the 5.3. So almost 2 million tickets less than what Mad Max Fury Road had actually sold. Now, maybe the film does even better than expectations, right? Maybe the film makes $50 million over the 3-day. Not a lot of people seem to be indicating that's a possibility, but hey, you never know. That would bring it all the way up to $3.8 million over 3 days. So this 3-day comparison, I think, is going to be very important, because what it shows us is just how less people are going to see these movies. Right? And even though I'm actually intrigued by the film, I do like Anya Taylor-Joy. I like that casting a lot. I think that Chris Hemsworth looks like he's actually having fun in a movie, which we have not seen in a long time because he's been stuck in the MCU. I mean, I say stuck, obviously he was being paid very well, but it's still, again, going to be nice, I think, to see a little bit more of a fun personality from him, being crazy and wacky and being the bad guy. Again, kind of a change of pace for him in a lot of ways, but it's going to be interesting to see just how much, like how much less does this film actually perform versus Fury Road? Not even just on, okay, because some people are going to do this, you all already know, right? Tony especially over 10 Line would probably do this, right? Saying, well, hey, this is the greatest opening weekend for the franchise since 2015. Right, obviously not taking into account the 1980s films. And remember, the reason why I sometimes don't bring films that old into my charting is because there's no real international presence for this film, so it's not necessarily the most fair comparison, and also things get a little bit harder to track when it comes to those movies too. But Lord knows that a lot of people are going to run away with that 4-day total saying, oh man, look how much this is, like, look how much more this made versus Fury Road, right? Clearly, this is selling more. But when you actually look at the raw ticket sales, you're going to say, but wait a minute, that's not actually true. Yes, you might have more dollar value, but the value of the dollar today, obviously a lot less than it was back in 2015. And then if you look at the ticket sales, it's still a lot less people. Like, let's say this movie gets that high end that some are projecting of $55 million over the 4-day opening. That only brings it up to 4.2. So we're still dealing with 1 million plus less tickets sold for Furiosa than what it was for Mad Max Fury Road. So these are going to be the numbers that we're going to be tracking on the channel. And of course, make sure you stay tuned to the Sunday stream, the Sunday video where I do the box office breakdown, because I'll be able to give you all of the analysis on exactly what this movie is making, what the tracking is looking like, and what we can expect it, especially since a lot of films make around 30% of their box office in their first week. We also remind ourselves that when it comes to the movies coming out this weekend, there's a lot of films yet to be released. Right. The one thing that I do know is right now live on the website Box Office Theory from Sean Robbins. He's the one that I would rather go to for tracking. He gives us an idea of the things that are set to come out. So you also have the Sight film from Angel Studios. It's not really making a big splash, $5 million, single digits is what that's kind of looking to do, which doesn't surprise me all that much. Again, so it looks like it's going to have maybe a weekend. So 1 week kind of by itself before Bad Boys Ride or Die comes out. And I don't really expect a lot from that one, but still $50 to $60 million, some competition. You then have the M. Night Shyamalan son, I think this is the film, directing The Watchers. So that's expected to make 13 and 19. And then Inside Out 2, June 14th. So it does technically have maybe a week by itself before any real competition, but it's also got to go up against the films it's going up against right now. And if we know anything about what happened with Mad Max Fury Road, as well received that film was by audiences, by critics, right, whatever metric you want to use, it still just did not make a lot of money, right? If you account for things like inflation, just to give you a quick metric on this, since I don't have the actual number in front of me, but looking at 380, since I know it's about 1.3 was because of the rate of inflation, that would be equivalent today around $500 million, right? 494, around $500 million. So again, for the kind of movie that it is, for the kind of audience that it has, that's pretty good. But by the standards of today, by the things that movies need to make today, right, it's still not really there. It's still not really where it needs to be. And remember, right, because so much money is now going to be made by this franchise internationally, right? This is a much more strong international performing movie than domestically. And when you ultimately break down that random crazy charting method I like to use, my RCC method of that 55% for the domestic, 40% for the international, China, of course, being 25%, yeah, those numbers start to matter, right? Because you're getting that much less return on your investment in those different countries. And so if the vast majority of your wealth is coming from those international markets, that means you're getting a lot less in return. I've actually already done a bit of a breakdown on these ticket sales earlier today. I've been working like crazy trying to make an updated chart, a new chart that's going to take into account these new methods to maybe kind of replace that 2.5 multiplier that I typically use, because it's really hard to put a multiplier on films today that actually looking and seeing where the films are making money, how much of it are they actually keeping, and what kind of metrics can we actually use to try to get the most accurate data available. And let's just say, not only is it, of course, obvious that most films from last year, and including this year continuing on, are losing money, in some cases a lot of money, but films like this, where I think it will have a pretty good showing, I think that it's going to be well received. The early reviews that I've heard have been mostly positive. I've not really heard a whole lot of criticism or heard a lot of girl boss commentary or things like that. But at the same time, there were still a lot of fans that were miffed by Fury Road. I know a lot of people who are big fans of Mad Max, who when they saw Fury Road, they thought they were getting a Mad Max movie, and they ended up getting a Furiosa film. Now, again, I like the film. I enjoyed that film, but I will admit, and I will say the criticism is valid to say it's not a Mad Max movie, because it really isn't. It really is a Furiosa story, and Mad Max is just a side character. And I think that bait and switch was not well received, and I think that may have had some impact at those box office numbers, but it still did pretty well. what's going to happen this time when people know what they're getting, when it's not necessarily going to be the bait and switch because it's just, straight up in front, hey, we're just doing Furiosa this time with the Mad Max story, Mad Max saga in the sideline. And what is that going to mean for the total results? What are y'all's thoughts about this? Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think the film's going to make $40 million over 4 days? That is what Deadline is saying. Or do you think more, more optimistically that maybe it'll get 40 to 50 million over the 3 day and then maybe 45 to 55 over the 4 day like they do over Box Office Pro? Let me know your thoughts about that. You did also have 46.5 with a high end of 59. So even the numbers by Box Office Theory was saying it could get upwards of 60 million for the 3 day. Now, I think I had mentioned this last time that I was hoping he'd update his chart because I think what he really meant here was the 4 day opening, because this chart only looks at 3 day openings. It doesn't actually take into account holiday frames. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually his thoughts on what the 4 day total would be. But could it get upwards of 60 million? Seems possibility, right? With Box Office Pro's high end being 55. The other high end being 60 million is not outside the realm of possibility. I'll let y'all know tonight. I'm going to go see the film. Make sure to follow me over on Critic List because I'll get my written review up a lot sooner. I'm going to try to get a video review posted for the channel sometime tomorrow, since now I'm in summer mode and do have some things going on tomorrow as a teacher, professional development, things like that. Obviously going to take up some time, but hopefully I've got a little bit of free time to be able to get that video posted. If not, though, follow me over on Critic List. But let me know your thoughts on this. Do you think that Furiosa is going to win the weekend? Do you think Garfield's going to win the weekend? Didn't spend a lot of time on Garfield because ultimately, I just gonna be honest, I'm not as interested in that film. But hey, right now, tracking looking pretty good. Even as early as about a week ago, Sean Robbins looked and saw that it was trending towards $32 to $41 million. So not nearly as close in his metrics. So the fact that it's gotten a lot closer, according to Deadline and to Box Office Pro, tells me, okay, maybe those sales are looking a little bit different. So what do you think is going to win the weekend? What do you think is going to make more money by the end of its run? I think as far as potential, Garfield has a better potential. Shout out to Valiant Renegade. He's been doing a lot of coverage of that. And the big win for Garfield is it cost $60 million. So that film doesn't need to make a whole lot more now because it's already gotten an early international release. It doesn't need to make a lot more now to actually break even and make profit. In fact, it probably will end up be profitable and making profits after this weekend is over. If not by this weekend, by the end of next weekend, whereas Furiosa, if it's going to make money at all, it's going to take probably a good while. But let me know. Let me know your thoughts about this or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, live that fire button, Aussie, and smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a continued blessed feast of Pentecost, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my May supporters at the Chosen of Valhalla level, starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illick. Hail to you, Father. Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider. And also Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star peeps, starting off with Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name. And ZK-Man, check him out over at xtheboundaries.co. And also, lastly, to my YouTube member at the Chosen of Valhalla level, Mr. Roy, who is, of course, awesome, as all of my Chosen are amazing. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description below. You can also get access to things like exclusive podcasts and giveaways. I do a giveaways channel on Discord if you are a member at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, and a ton of other stuff. So check out more information about that in that top link below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.